This episode of the EV Resource Podcast is brought to you by Titan Auto and Tire. Titan has some of the very few independent auto repair shops in Central Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs and hybrids. And from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. For more information and to schedule an appointment for your vehicle, go to TitanAutoTire.com. Coming up this week, Tesla might be close to opening up their Supercharger network here in North America. Polestar and Volvo vehicles get a decent range bump. Toyota's CEO has stepped down, and much more. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 139 of the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and interviews with industry experts. It has been a busy week for me and a busy week in the world of EV news. For myself, I spent yesterday at the DC Auto Show, and there were so many new EVs there. Chevy had their full lineup with the Blazer, Equinox, and Silverado EVs, of course, and the Bolt EV and EUV that they already have on sale. There was the Ioniq 6 and a really cool EV hovercraft. If you're curious to hear all about the show, I'm going to have that at the very end of the podcast episode. We have a lot of news to go through. First, 7 of the top stories, starting with some exciting news about a big partnership between Experian and our friends at Recurrent. So this first story coming from autoremarketing.com, they're reporting that Experian is expanding on their commitment to equip dealers with the data needed to buy and sell used electric vehicles with confidence, especially since battery health is pivotal in valuing used EVs. On Thursday, Experian announced a new alliance with Recurrent, as the Recurrent battery report for used EVs will be offered alongside Experian's auto check reports. The Recurrent battery report offers additional data and attributes on an EV battery's health, including battery insights, weather impact, and more. And while dealers and consumers alike have historically looked to a vehicle's mileage as an initial barometer for condition, Experian acknowledged range and battery longevity are more informative for used EVs, which that information may not have been available without the battery report from Recurrent. Recurrent's report is designed to bring additional transparency to the used EV purchase process, augmenting the information from Experian's AutoCheck report to answer specific questions about the purchase of a used EV. Recurrent's CEO and co-founder Scott Case said in a news release, quote, "Car dealerships are getting lots of new questions from their customers about range and battery health. How does actual EV range vary from the EPA estimates? How does range fluctuate in freezing conditions, and how does that change over time? The Recurrent battery report provides these answers as an excellent complement to the existing AutoCheck vehicle history report, providing a complete solution suite for used EV acquisition and sales," end quote. Experian's clients can now add the Recurrent battery report to their existing AutoCheck subscriptions. And additionally, if you guys don't know already, Recurrent offers free battery reports on a monthly basis to existing EV owners. So if you have an EV, I definitely would recommend you go to their website and sign up for that. I did that very early on when we got our Tesla Model 3, and every single month in my email, I get a report on how the car is doing, how it compares to other vehicles in the fleet, and overall, what kind of range expectations we can get. We can see charging behavior and history. A lot of great information for somebody that would value that. But more importantly, should we ever go to sell the Tesla, I now have a stack of reports every single month that we've owned it that shows how we've treated the car and the current condition of the battery. So in theory, we could get a little bit more money for selling it like private owner than somebody else might if they didn't have this report, because we're giving more value to a potential buyer. I did have the opportunity to interview Scott Case back in episode 99. So if you're interested, go back and check that out. It's also available on YouTube, so you can view the video as well as just listening to it. Recurrent is one of those companies that is absolutely revolutionizing the space they're in. There's a lot of value to it, and I am a huge fan. So it's really exciting to see a report coming out that they're partnering with somebody like Experian. This is a big deal. Next, Tesla might be close to opening up access to their North American Supercharger network to non-Tesla vehicles. With the launch of their non-Tesla Supercharger pilot program in Europe, Tesla also added a filter to its Find Us map on their webpage that displays superchargers, and the filter will allow them to show superchargers that are open to non-Tesla vehicles. Earlier this month, Tesla also added the same filter to their US map. However, at the time, only one supercharger was displayed, the one in Hawthorne, California, which is conveniently located close to their design studio. In addition to adding the filter to the map on the website, Tesla also added the Hawthorne location as an option under the Charge Your Non-Tesla menu in the mobile app. Selecting the stall revealed a rendering of a supercharger with Tesla's Magic Dock. The Magic Dock is a special CCS adapter that is built into the existing supercharger equipment and will unlock but lock to the charging cable for use with non-Tesla vehicles. At this time, both the filter and image have been removed from their website and the mobile app, but thanks to Twitter users Hayden Sawyer and Brandon Flash, we have the images saved. So while we can't see this now, it does appear that these accidental reveals by Tesla indicate that they are getting closer to opening up the supercharger network here in North America, and it's likely that that first location will be the Hawthorne, California site. Unfortunately, like many things regarding Tesla's future plans, we don't have further details. However, the change to allow non-Tesla vehicles to use the supercharger network is likely to start this year, and it will shake up the EV charging experience for owners of CCS-equipped vehicles. With only one manufacturer currently planning to adopt Tesla's NACS plug, it will be important for CCS-equipped vehicles to be able to use the supercharger units, even if the owners haven't invested in an adapter themselves, and it looks like the Magic Dock might just be the answer to that problem. In order to roll out this change, Tesla will need to retrofit the Magic Dock to existing supercharger equipment, so it should be fairly easy to recognize when access to the network is imminent. I, for one, am super excited about this. I cannot wait to see the charging experience for CCS-equipped vehicles improve, and one of the best ways to do that is giving them access to Tesla's network, because it is one of the most reliable charging networks here in the US. And during their fourth quarter earnings call this past Wednesday, Tesla had a number of good things to celebrate: record production and deliveries, an increase in profits, and a significant increase in revenue. However, if you are a Cybertruck reservation holder, not everything was sunshine and rainbows. Since the unveiling of the Cybertruck in 2019, Tesla has given a significant number of updates to the expected start of production, delaying the original expectation by years. More recently, the company has guided that production will start this year, likely in the summer or early fall. During the earnings call, when asked directly about the Cybertruck's expected start of production, Tesla's CEO Elon Musk responded, quote, "We do expect production to start, I don't know, maybe sometime this summer, but I always like to try to downplay the start of production because the start of production is always very slow. It increases exponentially, but it's always very slow at first. So I wouldn't put too much thought into start of production. It's kind of when does volume production actually happen, and that's next year," end quote. So the name of the game for those in line for their Cybertruck is waiting. But that isn't something new. And while we will see the first Cybertrucks hit the road this year, there likely won't be more than a few thousand produced. On to 2024, it would seem. Next, fans of Volvo cars have something to celebrate: more range, faster charging, and rear-wheel drive configurations. The brand has recently announced changes for the upcoming model year that improves the functionality and appeal of their electric vehicles. Volvo has said that as a part of their new package of product updates, they have now improved the range and charging speeds for the XC40 and C40 vehicles compared to the outgoing model year, increasing range by as much as 37 miles on some variants. Furthermore, 3 new powertrain options are going to be offered on both vehicles, including 2 rear-wheel drive options, and that is the first time that Volvo has gone rear-wheel drive in 25 years, and a revised all-wheel drive performance model. Another first for the brand is that the electric motors used for the C40 and XC40 models have now been developed in-house. In a press release from the company, COO and Deputy Chief Executive Javier Varela said, quote, "These updates are another big step in our work towards becoming a fully electric car maker by 2030. Range and charging times are new key factors for more and more of our customers, and these improvements make our fully electric models even more attractive than they already were. End quote. The single motor standard range is driven by a 175 kilowatt permanent magnet electric motor in the rear, and that provides a 3% increase in power output over the outgoing 170 kilowatt single motor front wheel drive variant. In the XC40 Recharge single motor, the same 69 kilowatt hour battery capacity is carried over, but enhancements in cooling efficiency mean that it can now deliver increased range and driving up to 240 miles on the EPA test cycle. The range of the C40 Recharge single motor, meanwhile, improves up to 245 miles on the EPA test cycle. A 10 to 80% charge will take approximately 34 minutes using a 130 kilowatt DC fast charger. And if you feel the need for more power and range, you can also opt for a larger battery coupled with a more powerful 185 kilowatt permanent magnet motor on the rear axle. This second new variant comes with an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack, which boosts range up to 270 miles on the EPA test cycle for the XC40 Recharge single motor extended range, and up to 275 miles for the C40 Recharge single motor extended range. Here too, charging power has improved as the larger battery pack allows for charging at an updated top rate of 200 kilowatts DC. It was previously 150 kilowatts. And a 10 to 80% charge takes approximately 28 minutes. The all-wheel drive variants also benefit from these updates, realizing even more impressive range improvements. The previous setup of two 150 kilowatt motors on the front and rear axles has been replaced by their in-house developed 183 kilowatt permanent magnet motor on the rear axle and a 117 kilowatt asynchronous electric motor on the front axle. This new configuration, compared with an 82 kilowatt-hour battery pack and overall efficiency improvements in battery cooling, mean that the XC40 twin-motor all-wheel drive can now go up to 310 miles WLTP on a single charge, a 38-mile boost over the previous iteration. The range of the C40 Recharge twin-motor all-wheel drive has improved up to 315 miles WLTP from 218 miles. No EPA estimates were released for the twin motor all-wheel drive configurations. That's why it's WLTP. But we can kind of do the math there. It won't be as much, but it'll still be pretty good. Exterior updates also help to improve efficiency where possible. For example, a new 19-inch alloy wheel for both the XC40 and C40 Recharge models not only boosts the overall look of the models, but it also helps reduce drag through its aerodynamic design. So this is great news for the Volvo vehicles. I am excited about this. It's always nice to see an auto manufacturer improving their vehicles, especially when it comes to areas of charging speed and range. Definitely two areas that, at least when I tested the Polestar 2, which is a similar powertrain, I felt like those were two areas that needed improvement. Polestar has also made a similar announcement updating the range, charging speed, and adding rear-wheel drive for the Polestar 2. I'm not going to get into the details on that, but the point is that is what was needed. So Volvo was definitely listening to their customers and listening to potential customers about what they were asking for, and it looks like in this case, they're delivering on that. Next, some major changes are happening over at Toyota. The company announced this week that Akio Toyoda, the president and CEO of Toyota Motor Corporation, will step down from his position on April 1st. And no, I don't think this is an elaborate April Fool's Day joke. Toyoda will become the chairman of the board, with current chairman Takashi Uchiyamada retiring from that position. Taking Toyoda's place will be Koji Sato, who is currently the president of the Lexus brand and Gazoo Racing, the motorsports division that has developed the high-performance GR Supra and GR Corolla. Sato has been in that current role since 2020. So this is interesting. Toyota was a roadblock in the path of Toyota's EV progress, a very outspoken opponent to going full steam ahead with full battery electric vehicles. And under his watch, the company has been very reluctant to commit to a fully electric lineup, with a number of reasons or excuses why they didn't think it was the right move or not the right time. In an interview with Financial Times, Toyota said, quote, Because of my strong passion for cars, I am old-fashioned person in regards to digitalization, electric vehicles, and connected cars. I cannot go beyond being a car guy, and that is my limitation, end quote. He acknowledged that the new personnel will be able to shift the direction of the company, explaining that he needs to, quote, take a step back in order to let young people enter the new chapter of what the future of mobility should be like, end quote. So personally, I'm interested to see what the company Toyota will do at this point. They've already started a new EV platform for future vehicles, and they've already made a visible shift towards full battery electric vehicles. So will we see this timeline sped up? Or will they continue as they have been with no update to the plans they've already set in place? Next, I'm sure you have noticed, just like I have, that it seems like high-powered and high-performance EVs are entering the marketplace left and right. And this next story is about the latest concept from a smallish company, Ariel. That's right, the British automaker that brings us the iconic Atom and Nomad performance vehicles has revealed this week plans to make an EV performance beast named the Hypercar. And that's Hypercar. So not hyper with a Y, but hyper with an I. And that's not an amusing play on words or spelling it differently to be kind of unique. Hypercar in this case actually stands for High Performance Carbon Reduction. The vehicle is constructed with an aluminum chassis and subframe. While departing from the normal styling themes of the company, it will come complete with a fully enclosed body and cockpit. And that looks very, very similar to the McMurtry Sperling, which in of itself looks like the Batmobile. So in this case, you could say it's another car that looks like the Batmobile. It's pretty crazy looking. The body, made of entirely carbon fiber, is largely made up of aerodynamic pieces designed to maximize downforce and cornering grip. 4 electric motors, one for each wheel, supply a total of 1,163 horsepower and 1,327 pound-feet of torque. But if that's too much, they're also going to be offering a rear-wheel drive only version, which limits power to 581 horsepower and 664 pound-feet of torque. The battery is a Cosworth supplied 62 kilowatt hour, 800 volt pack. But the interesting thing about this car is not the way it looks, even though that is interesting, and it's not the power, which granted, that is really, really cool and interesting as well. No, the interesting thing about the Hypercar is it has an optional range extender, and it's not a combustion engine. They're going with a CatGen turbine engine. And CatGen in this case is short for catalytic generator. And this is probably the most fascinating technology you have never heard of. So I am going to take some time here to explain exactly what it is, how it works, and why I think it might be one of the most revolutionary things to happen in the EV space. And there are a few people that listen to this podcast that I know are going to geek out about this just as much as I have. So this next section, I hope you guys enjoy this because it is spectacular. Okay, so the CatGen is a fuel-agnostic micro-turbine device that generates a hot, high-pressure air and fuel mixture and then introduces that to spin a turbine. The turbine is then attached to an electric motor, generating electrical energy that can be used to charge batteries. It's not very efficient at only 28%, but compared to an internal combustion engine, and many of them that are used as range extenders, 28% honestly isn't all that bad. The fuel efficiency in this application is fixed for all types of fuels by the thermodynamics of the system and the recuperated Brayton cycle. That being said, fuel consumption will vary based on the type of fuel used. And even when that fuel is traditional gasoline, because the operational temperatures of the CatGen are below the threshold that NOx gases are produced, emissions even on gasoline are very minimal. But this can be run on any liquid or gaseous fuel. Anything. It could even be run on hydrogen for a completely emission-free operation. Hydrogen and oxygen in, water out. So, here's how it works. In the first stage of the operation process, air is drawn into an intake compressor, which, as you might guess, compresses it, and then that increases the temperature and pressure of the air considerably. That compressed air then passes through a heat exchanger and is heated even further using energy recovered from the hot exhaust gases. Next, fuel is introduced into the heated air and reacts continuously as it passes through the catalyst, raising the temperature from 650 degrees Celsius all the way up to 1050 degrees Celsius. And that is almost 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. This further increases the flow energy of the air-fuel mixture before it goes into the turbine. This is all a flameless reaction and does not have any combustion involved. Instead, it is a highly controlled exothermic reaction. The expanding hot gases, after passing through the catalyst chamber, then pass into the turbine, spinning it up to 110,000 RPM, which then drives the compressor and the electric generator using a common shaft. And just like with a turbocharger, the cycle is somewhat continuous with more air being compressed and heated. However, with the CatGen, the high energy hot exhaust gases flow back through the heat exchanger, losing heat and energy to the intake gases before being expelled from the device at less than 350 degrees Celsius or 662 degrees Fahrenheit. That, as far as exhaust gases go, is actually very cool. Thanks to the energy transferred in the heat exchanger, the fuel that is introduced is only used for the first half of the work. Its role is simply to increase the temperature in the catalyst chamber rapidly. So that's how it works. In this case, with this application, the electric generator is designed to output 35 kilowatts of electric energy, which then can be used to charge the battery. So to get back to the news story, Ariel is planning on using this technology to charge the battery pack in the hypercar. Now, they haven't said what fuel they're planning on using it with, and they also haven't said how much the car will cost, what the range will be, how much it weighs, or when deliveries will begin. So there's still a lot of unknowns in terms of the application of this technology and what they're planning on doing. But just to have an idea of what they're planning on doing with this is just so exciting. I cannot wait to learn more about this one. And lastly, Lucid has unveiled a compact electric drive unit for Formula E racing. But as I've mentioned before, and I'm sure you know, the technology that is used in racing gets developed and eventually makes its way into the production cars that you and I drive. So I am really looking forward to seeing what Lucid has done here. The new compact electric drive unit incorporates the motor, inverter, differential, and transmission all into one small unit, which in this case will be used on the front axles of this year's Formula E race cars. And according to Lucid, the front drive unit that was designed and engineered in-house makes up to 469 horsepower, has a maximum rotor speed of 19,500 RPM, and here's the kicker, it weighs just 70.5 pounds. Peter Rawlinson, CEO and CTO of Lucid Group, had this to say, quote, "With incredible power density of 14.7 horsepower per kilogram and immense energy recuperation, this drive unit will once again transform electric motorsports, following in the footsteps of our revolutionary battery pack in prior race seasons. For Lucid, the transfer of technology between motorsports and road cars is a two-way symbiosis. The new motorsports drive unit builds directly upon the groundbreaking powertrain technology developed in-house by Lucid and proven on the road in every Lucid Air. I'm excited about the prospect that some of the technological advancements introduced may in turn make their way into future Lucid road cars." End quote. So cool. Technology is getting better, my friends. Very soon, very, very soon, there will be no reason to drive an internal combustion vehicle at all. Electric mobility is taking over and will be dominating the roads, rails, water, air, all sooner than you or I might realize. What an exciting time to be alive. Okay, so that is it for the news segment this week, but I've got a lot more coming for you, including the question of the week right after this.
Do you own a business and want to reach EV owners and people interested in electric vehicles? EV Resource is welcoming businesses nationwide, both big and small, to become advertising partners with us across all platforms. The EV Resource podcast, magazine, YouTube videos, social media, and our webpage. For more information, please email Zach at hello@ev-resource.com.
Now it's time for the question of the week. Each week I ask you a question related to a news story and put up a poll on the Patreon page where you all have the opportunity to engage and respond with your answer and comments. Last week I had asked about Aptera and if they should include DC fast charging as standard equipment as an option, or if the vehicle really didn't need it. Funny thing was, right after I finished recording and publishing the podcast, the company Code founders released a video that they were in fact going to have DC fast charging standard after all. So that kind of makes the question somewhat irrelevant, but I'm going to read out the results anyway because I found that your comments and thoughts on it were enlightening. So the results on the poll were split. 60% said yes, it should be standard. 20% said it should be an option, and 20% said that for Aptera, no DC fast charging is perfectly fine. And it looks like we have a variety of comments as well. I had an email come in from Linda Heckling where she says, quote, "The owners of the company made a huge point that they had been strongly advised to pick a single configuration for their launch vehicle. So regardless of whether it is a good idea to eventually have DC fast charging, for the initial 400-mile launch configuration, I think going with the simpler version makes sense to keep costs and complexity down. Most people need a stop before they reach 400 miles anyway, so they can slurp a little at each stop or on a road trip in addition to the solar power. If Aptera gets the $50 million investment they need, and if the vehicle launch succeeds, then they can work on expanding all kinds of options, including other ranges and more complex and expensive DC fast charging." End quote. Charles Hall commented, quote, "Good grief, in 2023, fast charging must be standard," end quote. Rajiv Narayan said, quote, "My guess is that they are struggling financially to bring this thing to market and are having to make some difficult decisions. One place to potentially cut costs is DC fast charging, which they could then install later in launch edition vehicles when their financial situation changes. I believe all this talk about DC fast charging not being really needed is just spin to hide this difficult fact. Makes me worry a bit that their ability to bring the vehicle to market is in jeopardy. On the flip side, let's say they are able to secure funding. Some white knight steps in and funds them, like Amazon and Ford with Rivian, or Tesla and the government $500 million loan guarantees, although not necessarily in this case. Then I think we will see DC fast charging in launch edition vehicles on day one." And Christopher Lawrence said, quote, "There is no way this machine needs a fast way to onboard energy. If I squeeze into a metal tube in New Jersey, 3 hours later, I'd better wake up in LA. There is a reason that motorcycle riders who go on cross-country rides don't want to rumble. They're tired. If someone feels the need to push themselves to the limit, get a bigger battery. Then when you've had enough of it for one day, stop, plug in level 1, and take 4 ibuprofen. And I'd be willing to wager that as this rock continues to lap the sun, most folks aren't going to need all of that battery that they used to think was necessary. But then, to each their own." End quote. So I'm going to respond mostly to Chris's comment because I disagree with it not being needed. I think it is needed, and I'm going to give you the reasons why I had ordered the specific Aptera that I did and why I think that I know that I really want DC fast charging on it. So I have reserved the 250-mile range option. And the reason that I chose that is because it is the least expensive. It, in theory, will also be the lightest. For me, 250 miles of range covers almost all of the trips I make. Like daily, I drive maybe 10 miles a day, and then every now and then I'll drive 200 miles or maybe a little bit further. So having DC fast charging is going to give me choices where if I want to take that vehicle on a longer road trip past 250 miles, then I can have fast charging that'll quickly get back to a realistic charge, and then I can continue on. Without it, I would be forced to consider upgrading to the 400 or 600 mile options, which that would add weight and cost. So for me, having DC fast charging and the smallest battery possible is what makes the most sense. So naturally, I am thrilled that they have announced that they are going to include DC fast charging as standard, not only for the launch edition vehicles, but for all of the vehicles. And it was certainly something that a lot of people responded to the company requesting that. I mean, there was somewhat of an uproar in the Aptera community. And as I mentioned in the news segment, the question of the week this week is this. How many Tesla Cybertrucks do you think will be delivered in 2023? The optional poll answers are 1,000 or less, between 1,000 and 5,000, between 5,000 and 10,000, or do you think more than 10,000? If you want to participate, the process is easy. Just head over to patreon.com/EVresource and look for the pinned post. While you do need to have a Patreon account in order to interact with that post, you do not have to be a supporter of EV Resource on Patreon. So just keep that in mind. It is free. It doesn't take anything. And I love the interaction and hearing your thoughts. On then to the EV Resource Hotline segment, new for this year. This is your chance to be featured on the podcast. All you have to do is call in and leave me your EV question, comment, or discussion topic. It's super easy to do this. Simply use your smartphone's built-in voice recording software, record your message, and please try to keep it to 90 seconds or less, and then email that file to me at hello@ev-resource.com. That's it. This week, we don't have anyone that submitted a recording or called in, as I'll call it. So if you have a question, comment, or discussion topic that you want to have featured, go ahead and record it, send it in to me. I look forward to this becoming a favorite segment of the show. And yes, while it is new, I don't expect everybody to jump on board right away. But I would love to have too many recordings to include in one episode so that then I would have to have it carry over into another episode. Basically, I want to interact with all of you. I don't want this to be like where you're just listening to my voice and screaming to the car or whatever. I definitely want to interact with all of you and make this podcast show much more interactive. And before I end for this week, I do want to thank the Patreon supporters, our growing family that supports my efforts here with EV Resource. These generous individuals have chosen to give a small financial contribution, as little as $5 a month, to show their appreciation for the podcast and magazine and everything that I'm doing here with EV Resource. In return, I show my appreciation for their involvement by giving them perks. The base tier, I call it the producer tier. Patreon supporters at this tier get their name read out here on the podcast once a month, receive ad-free episodes of the podcast, and are invited to our monthly Zoom hangout, the EV Resource Water Cooler Chat. Members of the producer tier are currently Alan Michael, Charles Hall, and Eric Weber. The next step up is only $10 a month, and at this executive producer tier, in addition to the benefits of the lower tier, I read out their names at the end of each podcast weekly instead of monthly, and I've also added a white EV Resource branded mug to this tier. Members who support EV Resource at the executive producer tier are Christopher Lawrence and Andy Cooper. Then at the top, the director tier, we have Rajiv Narayan. For only $25 a month, he gets all of the benefits of the lower tiers, a Keep Calm and Drive Electric EV Resource branded t-shirt, and maybe most importantly, help lead the direction of my efforts here at EV Resource. His feedback helps make the show better, and in planning for the future, those at the director tier will help influence the content of both the podcast and the magazine. And I feel like I don't ask for much in return for producing this podcast, but Patreon is definitely one way that if you feel like I have earned your support, you can give back. For me, it means a lot, much more than just the money, and I have a goal to hit. When the Patreon support amount reaches $500 a month, I'm going to be launching a podcast series discussing the many benefits of EV ownership by featuring EV owner stories from my Patreon supporters. So this is a chance for you to actually share your story and get that out there. Now, I'm a long way from $500 a month, so in order to encourage some growth here, for everybody that joins At the producer tier or higher during the first quarter of this year, I'm going to offer a 30-minute one-on-one Zoom call to discuss anything you have in mind. This is your chance to talk directly with me about anything you want. It can be EV related. It can be not EV related. I'm going to leave it entirely up to you. And existing members will automatically receive this benefit. So if you're listening and you are an existing Patreon supporter, just keep an eye out for your messages and we can arrange a time to schedule that. Additionally, and this is the last thing before I go, instead of mandatory membership fees or paywalls, I use advertising and affiliate connections to help keep the EV Resource podcast and the magazine free for everybody. So please consider supporting the sponsors and advertisers that help make EV Resource possible. You can find a full listing of those organizations and coupon codes and deals at ev-resource.com/deals. I also have on the webpage a small but growing collection of products on Amazon that I recommend. You can find that on the webpage under the shop section. I just recently added Electric Cars for Dummies. It's a book that you can buy off of Amazon. So if you are interested in checking out some of the chargers or charging accessories or even a plug-in blanket that warms up, you can find all of that on the EV Resource shop. So ev-resource.com/shop. And that will help me maintain my ability to be an Amazon affiliate. I think I need 3 sales every month or quarter or something. I got to revisit that. But I do need to have things coming in or else they will cancel that and I won't be able to do it anymore. So please go check it out. If you're going to buy something off of Amazon anyway, go through there. And if you don't see something on my shop page, and it's something that you want to buy, and you're going to buy it through Amazon anyway, reach out to me. Let me know what it is. I can either send you a custom link, or I can add it to the page if I feel like it's something that would be popular. So as always, I invite your feedback via email to hello@ev-resource.com. And that will do it for this episode. So thank you so much for being with me, and I'll catch you next week.